Now, hello, okay. I'm sorry, everyone. I had to unplug because I think there was something wrong with the Restream app on my computer, but I'm back. So I'll just wait for you to connect again. And, of course, this is a live video that is going to be online for 24 hours. And hopefully I can download it later and upload to my IGTV on Instagram as well. So welcome everyone. My name is Andre Hedlund. I'd like to introduce myself, talk a little bit about who I am, my professional experience, and how I can help you, hopefully, with project-based learning, which is something that I did a couple of years ago here in Brazil. I'm in Brazil. It's very hot. I know most of you are in Russia right now, probably, right? Maybe some people in Ukraine or different countries. So if you're from any other country, other than Russia or Ukraine, I'd love to know where you're coming from, okay? And, to honor you, I'm using my Russian doll mug that I don't remember who gave it to me, or maybe to my wife, and I'm having some tea, okay? So, welcome everyone. Yes. Kazakhstan, that's amazing, wonderful. I actually had a very good friend from Kazakhstan in Bristol, where I studied psychology of education. Wow, okay, a lot of people from different countries. That's awesome. Okay, everyone. So again, my name is Andre Hedlund. I'm a teacher trainer, and I've been an EFL teacher for over 15 years in Brazil. And I've worked at different schools with different methods. I have also worked as a private English tutor. So I've been teaching, and I still teach actually, private classes online. And nowadays I mostly focus on online courses, teaching training courses. And I'll give you all the details you need to know at the end of this session. And let's get started. I also work for National Geographic Learning, just in case you wanted to know that. And my dream is to change the world through education. So good evening and good afternoon for people on this side of the world. Again, my Russian doll mug, yes. And if you watched me during the Sky Teach Festival, you probably saw Mr. Trunk. So Mr. Trunk is my buddy who travels all over the world with me, some of my friends and students, and he is a fundamental part of PBL, okay? I'm from Brazil, everyone. Yes, from Brazil. So if you are interested in knowing more about Mr. Trunk and his adventures, you can follow me on Instagram. I'll tell you again at the end of the session. It's EDC Rocks. EDC Rocks. And Mr. Trunk Travels is the hashtag that you can use, the hashtag that you can use to find his adventures. Good evening from Russia. Wow, a lot of people joining. Excellent. So this is how I think I can do this. During the Sky Teach Festival session that I delivered on Saturday, there were a lot of questions about my experience with project-based learning, because I understand it's not something that we're very much used to doing. And I totally get it why you had so many questions about my experience and, PBL in general, especially applied to your contexts, as English teachers. I suppose all of you are English teachers. You can maybe come from different backgrounds. Maybe some of you are working with English as a foreign language, English as a second language, which is a little different, and English as a lingua franca. Or maybe you're just working in a bilingual context with bilingual education, which is something that is really taking off in Brazil right now. I'm going to give you the perspective of a private language school that I used to work for a couple of years ago. And I was an English teacher as a foreign language. So basically I spent 3 hours with my students throughout the week, okay? I had 4 groups at that time, so I didn't have as many groups as I used to. There was a moment in my life that I had 11 or 12 groups, a couple of years ago. And so I had 3 hours a week with each group, and each group developed project-based learning because we wanted to try something different, okay? And as I told everyone watching me during the Saturday session for SkyTeach, the first semester was a challenge because I felt like it was not working, and then I just gave up. I said, we're not ready, because I had to teach my students how to have the right mindset to work with PBL. So if you relate to anything I'm saying right now, if you feel like maybe you've tried to use PBL, but it didn't work because your students were not ready, or because maybe they don't have the right mindset for it, you can write in the comment section below, because I'd love to know more about your stories as well. So what happened in my case? I had been doing a lot of research about project-based learning, because I feel like project-based learning is something that is worth trying. I've read in different papers, academic journals. I've read in blogs. I read, in books that PBL is something that works very well, especially if we're looking for long-term memorization, and learning, of course. If we're looking for working with soft skills, if we're looking for giving your students more autonomy as learners and have them in charge of their own learning. So I was very much interested. I said, I think I have to try this thing. But I skipped a very important part of the process, which is Brazilian students are not used to that much autonomy or critical thinking, which are two essential things required for PBL, right? They have to be able to, think outside the box and try to solve problems. And so that's what went wrong in the first semester. So it was the first semester of 2017, and I realized that it was not working. We have to make changes. So I decided to create a different framework for all my lessons. I didn't use it in all the lessons, but I used definitely in most lessons. And then I showed this framework. I wrote about it in my blog, so you can take a look if you want. I can send you the link after, at the end. And it basically starts with a conversation, then we move on to a revision, and then we have 3 very important parts of the framework that relate directly to project-based learning. So the first one is the problem. So we are going to learn something. We have a problem. We have to use this problem to learn something to solve this problem, right? And the problem can be, the topic of the lesson that they're going to learn. So maybe the topic of their lesson is sustainability, very common lesson in English books, right? So what is the problem? The problem is that many countries or many cities or schools or private corporations are trying to reduce their footprint, their carbon footprint, right? So that's one of the problems. And then other students would come up with different problems. Great. And then we would select a more global, general problem. So maybe the problem is reducing the footprint. Great. Then we move on to inquiry. Inquiry, it's about asking questions. So the students are going to start asking questions. I'm very much involved in this part of the process. How can we solve this problem? How can we help institutions, governments, schools, whatever, reduce their footprint? And then they would probably brainstorm, write a list of things. And then we would move on to the investigation part, which would take a third of our lesson, about 25 minutes. The investigation part is where I give the students a lot of autonomy to do what I call self-discovery. So instead of teaching them all the vocabulary that goes with the lesson, or instead of teaching them the grammar structure that goes with the lesson, I will help them figure out how things work. So I'm working in a much more student-centered way, and helping them, solve the problems on their own. I know it sounds very challenging. It sounds like it doesn't work, but the research says that it works better. We just have to get out of our comfort zone and give it a try, and then see, for ourselves, basically. And that's what happened. In the first semester, they were not ready to do that. But then I convinced them, I persuaded them, I prepared them and said, listen, this works well. This is what many schools, elite schools around the world are doing. We can do it too, right? But now I'm going to answer the questions that were sent to me during the session. So I got a lot of questions, and this is how we can do this. If you want to ask a question related to the question that I have, please do that. I will try not to answer your questions before I go through all the questions here, unless it's related to the question that I have here. Because, the people who watched me on Saturday, they were the ones who asked these questions, so I owe it to them, right? And then at the end, if we have some time, I will try to focus on other questions. So do not ask anything that is unrelated now, because, so many people are making comments and just, joining the live that I will probably not be able to see. So when I say, okay, new questions, you can start asking questions, okay? And Mr. Trunk will try to help me. So let me have some tea. The first one is it possible to use PBL with individual students? So what do you think? Yes, could you give examples of your PBL? Yes, I will do that. It's actually one of the questions. But the first one is it possible to use with individual students? Yes, it is very possible. PBL is something that works on an individual level, because I think we, as individuals, we also work with projects. We have personal projects, we have professional projects. We set goals, checkpoints. Sometimes we have to change the plans, and it works well. So whenever I'm teaching a private lesson, online especially, I like to work with PBL as well. I think I use Google Classroom because it's free, and then I post the steps of the project that I want them to take. I also leave a lot of room for them to change the steps, because it's always about negotiation and giving your students a voice. And that was one of the problems in the first semester. I dictated the project to them. It doesn't work like that. They have to be part of the selecting process. They have to say, I want to do this project because this has to do with something that I like or something that I know. When you say, this is the project that you have to do, and they were not involved in the selection process, it doesn't work very well. So it's definitely possible to use PBL with individual students. The only thing that they're going to miss is the collaboration, because I think PBL facilitates cooperation, collaboration with peers. So if you're working with individual student, like a one-to-one class or something like that, the only person that you will collaborate with normally is you, because I know students will not go out of their comfort zone and talk to other people in English, but they can do that. So you can ask them to interview a lot of people for their project, which is great, especially if they get to talk to people from from different areas, people who might have a different accent of English. So that's very good for their listening skills as well. So yeah, you can definitely use PBL for individual students. Now, the second question is, can PBL be efficient in practicing and activating vocabulary and grammar? And then this teacher said that they used to think it's as good as a roundup activity rather than teaching. Very interesting question. I believe, yes, PBL can be efficient, could be even more efficient. From a neuroscientific perspective, I have a degree in psychology of education, and I have a lot of courses related to neuroscience and learning. We know that when we facilitate the so-called aha moment, so you might have heard of the aha moment or insight, when you connect two ideas, not because someone told you that they belong together, but because you saw the connection, that makes everything much more memorable, right? And I think this is what you can do with PBL. When you're teaching vocabulary and the students, they have to figure out what the words mean on their own, I know that some words might be more complicated. You have to help them. So sorry, what is PBL? It's project-based learning, okay, everyone? So we're talking about project-based learning and how I used it with my groups in Brazil, all right? So yes, anyway, when the students make their own connections, it's going to be more memorable. Neuroscience has a lot of evidence in that sense, showing us that whenever you help your students self-discover, or when it's more like guided discovery because you guided them, right? It's more effective. However, I did not stop teaching vocabulary and grammar, so there were moments that I would always have my students try first, try to figure out, try to see where you can use these words, what they mean, You could use a monolingual or a bilingual dictionary. You can have someone tell you or explain to you what those words mean, because then you get everyone to cooperate, right? Or collaborate. And it was much more meaningful to my students. So the instruction or the input was not just coming from me all the time as the teacher, but also from the peers and from themselves, because they were the ones trying to connect the dots in their minds, On the other hand, I don't think you should go full PBL all the time. Let's completely change the method. That's not what I'm saying. And again, PBL is project-based learning, is when at the center or the heart of your curriculum, there's a project. And it's a long-term commitment. It's, everything else is a branch of this project. So all the units that you have, so you have 6 units or 7 units, normally 6 units to cover in a semester. All those units, they will form one project that is going to be carried out throughout the semester. And this project is going to be anything really. Like I said before, the project could be a website, could be a blog that your students made. It could be a poster. It could be a song. It could be a play. It could be anything. It could be a book. Could be anything really. It's up to them, and they just have to find a way to connect all the units around that project. And then at the end of this project, they're going to present it. So one of the points of having PBL or project-based learning is that they can present it, and so that we can evaluate, and we can even include the peers in the process, okay? Do you use PBL right during the class, or do you give PBL as homework? I used it in the class. It was part of the lesson. It took, normally the PBL part of my lesson took around 1/3 of the lesson. It took around 25 minutes, 30 minutes, because I had 1.5 hours per lesson, okay? So again, I made a very, I'd say different, or, unique transition, because a lot of people are not allowed to work with that, or they feel discouraged to work with that. And then again, I'm going to cover more questions that relate to that, right? Which level and age can we start using PBL? To give you an idea, my youngest group, the name of the group was Connection. They were A1 plus, A2 actually, A2 CEFR, and they were 10 years old, okay? So 10 years old. Now, André, in case students are to interview someone in different institutions, do you assist in building contacts with interviewees? Yes, you ask for consent. Yes. Okay, so one of the things that my PBL experience, my project-based learning experience involved was interviewing international students, okay? And naturally, I had to ask my students' parents' permission to allow them to talk to students. But most importantly, I used safe environments to find those students, okay? So one of the environments that I started using is called Iron. So maybe I can write it here for you. So let's see if I can do it. Iron. Yes. So Iron is an online community. So maybe I can find the website here. Yes. It's never, okay, some people are asking me questions on the other hand. Yeah. So if you connect with IERN, International Education and Resource Network, there are 2 million students accessing every day, working on different projects, so you can be part of one of those projects, okay? And you know, of course, it's secure. I know the people involved with IERN, it's a global project, so you can be part of IERN. The first one is not learn, it's IERN, okay? Of course, I used WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is very common in Brazil, so you can use that. We have a big group with more than 100 teachers called TESOL group, and many teachers from all over the world. And then I asked the teachers if my students could interview their students. So you are part of a huge community. You can use this community to to do it. I mean, you can ask people from sorry, there are some other questions on the computer here. English communication is a problem. Project-based learning is the thing our chief is talking about, demanding from us. IERN, thank you very much. I loved yes. So anyway, you can use your own community to do it, okay? And I think it works very well. Now, let me go back to the next questions. Could you please share the titles of the most interesting projects for different levels? Okay, so I had 4 different groups and 4 different projects. Then I'm looking because I have 2 screens here to look at. So if I'm turning my head all the time, it's just to see if I'm getting questions. Anyway. Yes, the projects that I had were, the first group was Connection, 10-year-old students. They, people around the world, so they interviewed international students about their routines, about, the foods they eat, the different schools that they went to and things like that, the clothes they wore, what else? Basically that, the difference in cultures. That was it. So that was the basic one I had. The other group was about traveling and making memories. So they got the units of their books. So the book had 12 units. We were working with 6 units. One of the units was about traveling. The other unit was about learning. The other unit was about making memories, science and things like that. So they put all together. And they decided to focus on countries, going to different countries, how to get to those countries, where to go, what kind of scientific discovery the country had made, and what else, how, the memories that people have made in those countries and things like that. The other one was about All You Need Is Love. So All You Need Is Love was my favorite project, because the students, they had to work with media, they had to work with the vocabulary, the units, media, love, wedding, things like that, marriage, and then they decided to investigate how people celebrate love around the world and how the media, the local medias and even international media covered the events, right? And it was fun because they discovered how people celebrate Valentine's Day in Japan, in China, and things like that. So it was very interesting. Somebody's asking about the WhatsApp group. I will send you all the information at the end, how to get in touch with the WhatsApp group to be part of the community, and also how to be part of IERN, okay? And the last project, my most advanced group, they were adults. They decided to write a book. They decided that each unit of their book, their ELT book, was going to be a chapter of their book. So it was going to be a novel. And they decided that they were going to come up with different characters based on our lessons. And then they were basically going to get together to discuss who was going to write each chapter, okay? Now, let me carry on with the questions. The next question is, Special techniques to master reading, and how often should we use projects at our oral practice lesson? So basically, how to integrate reading and speaking in project-based learning, right? That's a very, very interesting question, because I think, well, about the orality, or speaking, PBL is much better than any conventional method, if you think about it, because you're really helping your students talk about the projects and trying to solve the problems, and trying to address what they have to do and come up with solutions. And when they're doing that, because they're talking about such a specific topic, they're using the vocabulary and the grammar that relates to the lesson. So a lot of people worry about, if you let them talk about their project, how will they use the target language? Well, that specific part of their project is covering the target language. If they're talking about sustainability and they have to use words such as eco-friendly or something like that, because it's part of the lesson, it's there. So they're going to be using it, And did you have any students who didn't? Yeah, I'm going to get there. And sir, I am everyday follow Sky Teaching BBC English, but my speaking problem every time, any solution? Oh, okay, I will talk about those things too. PBL might be one of the solutions, yeah? So again, project-based learning is very good for speaking. For reading, it's also excellent, because now they have to go beyond their books. The book should be one of the main instruments of investigation for their project. Again, every lesson, they're going to work a little bit on their project, and their book can be the source of research. Has to be. Unless, of course, you don't use a book, you work with private students. I don't know about your context, but what I'm saying is, a lot of teachers are afraid that, what about the book? What about the curriculum? The book is the number one source of investigation that they have to use for the project. So if your students have 30 lessons or 50 lessons or 60 lessons throughout the semester, every lesson they're going to look at one page of the book or 2 pages of the book. That's where they get the information to work with their projects, right? So that's the main source. But I also like to use technology, so I allow them to use Google, Wikipedia, as long as they can find the references at the end. And I also give them different websites to look for more information, okay? So they are reading more, because they're not just reading the text that the book provides, but they're looking for other sources. Now, what can be a little challenging for teachers to understand is, okay, the text that we have in the book was prepared for the level of the students and uses the vocabulary and the grammar that the students should be in touch with, right? Well, you will find that oftentimes when students are looking for texts about sustainability, they will come across the same vocabulary that the book is teaching them from different sources, Or when they're looking at traveling, they will come across the same vocabulary as well. So if you allow them to find different sources, they might find different contexts, but with the same target language, right? Maybe not exactly the same, but a little bit, okay? Now, the next question is, this is an important question. Are there topics you avoid setting to your students as the issues may be too sensitive? For example, religion, discrimination. I would love to hear your opinion on that. Do you avoid those topics? Religion, there's sexuality, discrimination. So let's see if anybody wants to comment. Here's your chance. Mr. Trunk will be very disappointed if you do not comment. So, do you avoid those issues in your lesson? Okay. Yeah, I think you do. You don't even want to share with me. Well, my take on it, what do I think about it? I think we don't need to avoid them necessarily. We just have to be extra careful. And I think we have to be kind and open. And also, it depends really on the context, on your school. If the parents have said anything to you, it could be very complicated for you to go against that. I know, because then you have a boss, you have a coordinator, you have a director. If you cause any problems, and maybe if you talk about something that is sensitive and the students bring that to their homes and then the parents know about it, they might call the coordinator. It might be complicated for you. In my case, I had students who were very much, how can I call them? They had a very strong opinion about certain things. So I recorded a video lesson on how to tackle those problems in the lesson. So one thing I would do, and within PBL, project-based learning, I would write some sensitive issues on Post-its. I love Post-its, by the way. Put some Post-its in different parts of the classroom and have the students walk around and write if they agree or disagree with that. So we wouldn't know who wrote anything. And then we would have a general conversation so that they would feel more comfortable about it. And of course, I would try as much not to judge anyone. It can be hard because sometimes you cannot control our facial expressions. If you strongly disagree with something, you might respond in a way that the students can tell. So again, it's sensitive, but I think everything can be sensitive. I went to IATEFL Budapest, and Frank Prescott, very good British teacher, was talking about parsnips. Have you ever heard of parsnips? If you know what parsnips mean, please tell me. Somebody said with 16-year-olds, it's okay. It's quite okay. Yep. So if you don't know what parsnips mean, it stands for politics. What is the A for now? R. Okay. I remember the N. The R is religion. N is for narcotics. Okay. I is for isms, like capitalism, communism, socialism. And P is pork. Right? So what is A again? There's sex. So P, politics. A, I don't remember. Anyway, R, religion. N, narcotics. I is isms, ideologies, for example. And P, pork. And I forgot. And S for sex. So those are the things that we normally don't discuss in the classroom, right? And Frank Prescott said we could, and we just have to be careful. But oftentimes, those are very, very good topics to have very long conversations about because they're controversial. So you can see your students talking a lot about it, right? Now, the next question is, can you give an example for technical specialities? Basically, physicists, I think. How to apply project-based learning to concrete specializations. Well, I'm afraid I cannot give you a lot of help with this, but I'd say if you're teaching physics in a bilingual context, if you're teaching at a bilingual school when you're the physics teacher or the biology teacher or the geography teacher, it's even better because, your students, they can work on, I don't know, maybe you're teaching potential energy or something like that. So they can build a model of a hydroelectric plant or I don't know. So this could be the project of the semester. And maybe you can have a science fair at the end of the semester, something that I did in a different school. And I did as a student in high school as well. And so I think it's even easier to work with projects if you have subjects like geography, biology. So maybe you can start what could you, if you're doing biology, you could have a herbarium or something like that, with plants or something like, or a greenhouse or it's up to you. So do you ask the students to choose their own topics for PBL? Yes, Alina. Thank you very much for this question that is related. Yes, the first time I did, I told them what projects they were supposed to do. The second time I did, because the first time didn't work, the second time I involved them in the selection process, okay? So yes, I asked them to be part of it. Next question, who would use the results of the projects that I did? It seems that they were for their own sake. So yes, I collected data to check if the students were learning better with PBL. I compared to, before they started. And this sounds good. Maybe some problems with the internet, yeah? Okay. Somebody said that can you hear me okay? Please let me know. Yeah, can you hear me? Hopefully, I suppose so, right? Anyway, so what was the question again? I forgot it now. Yeah, I collected data to assess whether the students were making progress or not. Okay, so you can hear me well, right? Great. And they were making progress. I felt like 88% of my students at the end of the semester, they had either the same grade they had before or better, which is 88% is a high number. So a lot of people think that PBL doesn't work. And I used the normal assessment, the tests, the exams that we had, with this method, okay? No, I'm in the metro. Okay, that's why my sound is not good for you. Anyway, so I used the same tests. I didn't change the tests or anything, and they still got good results. I mean, almost 90%, almost 90% of my group got the same grade or better, which means that PBL was working as well as, hopefully, or better than the previous method. And the previous method that I used was the communicative approach, the PPP framework, right? I'm not sure you're familiar with that. And how often can you introduce PBL, project-based learning, into the usual classroom routine? This is the most essential question, I think. At schools, we have to follow the curriculum to do it on time. It doesn't leave a lot of time for a project work. If you feel like that, raise your hands there. Yeah. Do you agree with that? We don't have time to work with PBL because you have to follow the curriculum, right? Yes. So raise your hand. Yes. I used to think like that, and I'm very happy that I was given the flexibility that I was in my school, because to be very fair, I had to do things faster. If I wanted to keep the same method, I had to kind of skip a couple of things or readapt. Adapt, not readapt, adapt the first time and do other things and replace things. But I allied, so basically I took the PBL framework, the project-based learning framework that I was working with, and I joined that with my notions of neuroscience and psychology, and I think it worked well. For example, there are a lot of activities in your book that they are just a repetition of another activity. That the student, so your students will have a sequence of activities, more controlled, less controlled, freer practice. You remember that if you use, big publishers' books, right? So one of the things that you can do is you can go straight to the freer practice, and the one that is more controlled, it's going to be recycling. And recycling is something that we can do very quickly in the next lesson for homework, in a revision lesson or something like that. So you just go to the core of the activities that are provided by the book, and then you can use the things that are kind of the easy step to get there for students to do at home or in a different lesson. On the other hand, you can have your students do it there, but it's on their own. You can say, you know what? So this is the investigation period. The problem is sustainability. And in your book, you have 5 activities about the vocabulary and the grammar, right? So I want you to work together in groups for you to figure out how to use the vocabulary and the grammar. Use your peers, ask them questions. I will be walking around. You can ask me questions. Use your own book. Use your mobiles for 20 minutes, your phones for 20 minutes to access Google, Wikipedia, whatever. Try to, if you're more advanced, use a monolingual dictionary. So try to find the definitions of words, because you are more advanced, you can do it, right? And so the students would do it in 20 minutes. So they realize that the book is not a fixed entity that you have to follow from the beginning to the end, because, it's not something that is, it works unilaterally just in this way. And this is not me who's saying. I am not an author of a book. I don't, I have never written a book, even though I want to in the future. But I have reviewed a book for National Geographic Learning, and I am friends with a lot of authors. And I can say here, on behalf of John Hughes from National Geographic, Hugh Deller, National Geographic, John Hurd, Oxford University Press, Paul Seligson, Richmond, and Luiz Otávio Barros from Brazil, Richmond, and so many other authors, Ken Wilson. Every single author will tell you the same thing. We don't expect you to do all the activities. You can, we make them the activities so you can have options to do them, but you are the boss of the planning. You are the one who will set the tone for your students, and we have to learn how to do that, and PBL allows us to do that, because unless, of course, it's coming from above, it's your boss who's telling you have to follow every single line of the book, especially if you're working for a school that has its own material, because then students might start complaining, oh, he's not using all the activities. I understand that. I worked a lot. I worked 5 years for a school like that. But you can speed things up, and you can skip a couple of things, and maybe you can reserve the last 10 minutes to work on a project. So I had a book that I had to follow every comma of the book. But then I always reserved 10 minutes at the end for the students to work with the States Fair. We had a United States Fair. We have a choice. And you can ask any author. I know, just look on my Instagram, you will see pictures of me with those authors. I have talked to them face to face. They will say the same thing. We offer you a lot of options. You select the ones that work best. And the novice teacher, the teacher who has no experience, will probably follow the book from, the very first word to the last word in the lesson. The ones who have a little more experience, they might adapt a couple of things. The other ones who are very experienced, they might just look at the point, the grammar point of the lesson and the vocabulary, and they can use that, but get other materials from the internet, for example. So they won't even touch the book, right? Again, the idea, the syllabus, the curriculum came from the book, but I don't have to use the book as the main source of teaching, right? Anyway, now, okay, next question. How can we incorporate, somebody asked me about evaluation. I have, Alina, I will talk about that at the end, okay? How can we incorporate PBL into a standard program suggested by the course book? Yes, I'd say that we can have mini projects per unit that will add up to the big project that involves all the units, okay? So if you want to try, to give it a try, my suggestion is at the end of every lesson, if you can save 10 minutes or 15 minutes, okay? You can save 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You've done your lesson. You can work with a project related to the unit, okay? Now, this is not ideal because you taught the students the vocabulary and the grammar. PBL is about discovering the vocabulary and the grammar and learning through discovery, okay? But if you have to take this first step to get used to students, being freer at the end of the lesson to work on a project, that's okay. But the second step, hopefully the next semester, just like I did, now instead of teaching the vocabulary and grammar, help your students discover the vocabulary and grammar and only teach when necessary. So invert your values, let them discover, then you help them with teaching if necessary, okay? It's much more memorable, I'm telling you. Now the next one, let me drink my tea. Oh yes, so I have the questions are almost over. This question is about organizing the group project. How do you check if all the students are involved? Some are very active, some are not very active. And the other question is related. How to engage shy or introverted students into the work? Well, I say, how do you engage introverted students in the methods you are using, right? So I think the same principles apply. If you are using the PPP framework with, presentation, practice, and production, communicative approach, many times when you are asking your students to do group work, there will be a student, and normally we'll have a production stage at the end of the lesson. There will be one or two students in each group that they don't want to get involved. They don't want to be engaged, It's the same thing. You have to engage them by using different techniques. Normally, I will allow students who are very shy to do something else that also contributes to what they're doing. So somebody who takes notes, we're brainstorming. You're going to take notes, you're going to add a couple of things, categorize the notes or do something like that. Or maybe they're going to report to me later. So at the end, somebody who's listening to everything, and then I will come closer to them and I say, so what can you tell me about what your group was doing? So you're going to be the reporter or something like that. You can also have the illustrator of the book, of the group. So maybe somebody who's going to draw something. And of course, we want the students to speak as much as we can. So you have to, force them a little if they're not doing it. I know you run the risk of exposing your students, and maybe they're going to be so shy they don't want to come back to the lesson. But we have to be honest with ourselves, with our profession. We are English teachers. We want our students to speak English, not just speak English, read in English, listen to people in English, write in English, but also speak English. If they don't speak ever, we're not doing our jobs. So I just try to create the most welcoming environment ever, allowing everyone to know that this is a safe place. You can make mistakes here. As a matter of fact, making mistakes is great for your brain because you memorize better, according to the research. I try to be enthusiastic. I try to help them realize that this is how you learn and it's okay. You don't need to know everything. You're here to learn, right? So this is what I do normally. And I think my students are pretty much engaged, but yes, I've had very quiet students, very shy students who were much more comfortable writing things down. And you know what? Sometimes those students, they are the best speakers when you do the oral test. Even though they were quiet, most of the lessons, they can do it really well, right? So, yes, the other questions is, what about adults? Adults, they normally feel that they have to stick to the core assignments connected with grammar and other serious issues, yeah? Yes, I think adults, they normally know that, but I think adults are perfect to work with PBL, project-based learning, because they are used to working on projects for their profession, in their lives. So my adults, they had to write a book. Basically, they would spend 20 minutes talking about who's going to write what, this character, what should this character's name be, what is the profession, let's draw the character, So I feel like adults, they can benefit a lot from project-based learning as well. And, they have a lot of experience with projects because everything we do is a project in a way, right? We have to renovate the house. We have to travel. We have to find a better job. We have, it's always a project. We set some goals and we have checkpoints. And that's what I did with my students. You have to set the goals. When can you do this? I can do this next week. Great. And then sometimes, no, I can do this next month. Next month is not very realistic. You have to guide them, right? We need this for next week or maybe in 2 weeks. Can you do it? Okay, I can do it. And again, it's always about negotiating. And then finally, let's talk about assessment, right? So here, how do you assess the students? And there is a matrix, and then I think, Alina, how do you evaluate the project presentations of students? I mean, any criteria or score matrix? Yes, very good. So I evaluated, so they had to present at the end of the semester. So a lot of students would come up to the front of the classroom and they would use the projector, the beamer, right, with their project. So many times it was a film or a website or a Facebook group or something like that, or the book, right? So how I would normally look at, because I'm evaluating English, but also social skills, so it was more formative. I didn't really give them a grade that was going to be part of their, final grades, because I focused on the process of doing PBL, not on the product so much. It's very important to focus on the process, right? PBL is something that helps you get better grades, right? So, but I gave them grades, yes, I did. It was not, to be fair, I could not really use the grades of the project with the grades of their tests, but I used for homework because we grade homework as well. So a lot of the homework grades, in my case, they were the grades that the students received for the projects, working in every lesson, showing that they were making progress and when they presented. So I looked at things, for example, because I'm an English teacher, so I looked at, speech. So are they pronouncing correctly? So pronunciation, accuracy, vocabulary, grammar. When they were presenting, I actually, because I am a speaker, I train teachers. I looked at things like public speaking skills. So I actually told them that this is the best way to do it. And, I had everyone involved. They could give them feedback if they wanted. So the students could say, yes, I'm okay. You can give me feedback in front of everyone, or you can give me feedback later. I will appreciate either way. So I did have a matrix. I did have a plan. I had a couple of columns for pronunciation, accuracy, grammar, public speaking. So I had like 6 or 7 columns, and I would just give them a grade that would be, I had like a 4-point system or something like that. So I didn't even use numbers. I would say, it was okay, it was great, it was good, it was okay, needs improvement. I think that's the system that I used, okay? To use, the growth mindset sort of framework, okay? Well, everyone, I think it's almost time for me to end this. If you have more questions now, you can ask them. If you don't have questions, I'm just going to write here where you can find more things, okay? So this is my website, edcrocks.com. I have an online course about project-based learning, how I did it. You can get more information on my website. You can also follow me on Instagram. So my Instagram account, and I'm going to write it there. So for you, EDC Rocks. Okay. So where is it? Yes, EDC Rocks. All right. So I'm writing here for everyone who wants to follow me, who wants to, well, if you did not participate, if you felt a little lost during this live because you didn't see my session during the Sky Teach Festival, you can read my blog post about it. And it's pretty much that. And I also have a recording of it on YouTube. So I can, if you go to my website, you can probably find that there. And because, I know it's a lot of information, a lot of questions. And if you were not part of the original, group watching me, so maybe a lot of things didn't make sense to you. Hopefully they did. I hope you got inspired to use PBL. A little bit, because I think PBL is worth trying. I think PBL is something that I would love to do it again. I'm not teaching right now because I just came back from England from my master's degree in psychology of education. Next year I will be teaching again, and I will definitely use PBL because for me, PBL is one of the best methods there is, okay? Thank you. Yes, my mug is really, really cool. Yes, thank you very much. It is. And thank you for the session. Great. Well, thank you very much for participating. If you have any other questions, please follow me on EDC Rocks. I have lives many weeks, probably most weeks I have lives about how to, use neuroscience in the classroom, psychology in the classroom, PBL and things like that. And I have some shows, some recorded lives that I downloaded and I uploaded to IGTV. So if you're familiar with Instagram, you can go to my IGTV channel and you can watch Chá Pedagógico. Chá means tea in Portuguese. And I do it with a good friend of mine, Rodolfo Maciello. So we talk about linguistics and neuroscience, okay? So you can watch that. I also interview teachers from around the world to know a little bit more about their story and how they became a teacher, some of their tips and things like that, okay? And you can watch everything on Instagram, EDC Rocks. Go to my website again. Take a look at my courses if you're interested, okay? And Mr. Trunk wants to say bye. If you want to ask me more questions, if you feel like I did not answer something very well, you can send me an email. So you can find my contact information on my website. You just go to edcrocks.com, go to contact, and then you send me an email. And then you say, I watched you during the live and I have a question about this or that. I will do my best to answer you, okay? All right? No final questions, hopefully. Maybe, I don't know. My tea is getting cold. No? Okay. So, goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much, Sky Teach community, for inviting me. And, if you want me to talk about anything else, I'll be around. You know where to find me. Thank you very much, everyone. It was I should take a picture of us now. So, yeah? I have too many things going on. So, let's take a picture. Excellent. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you.